Good morning. My name is Joseph Werner. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have a facility in Melbourne called Child and Family Consultants, and I work with a lot of families and children who have special needs and different types of behavioral difficulties. At my office too, we also have speech therapists, and we also work with ABA therapists, and we work closely with children's physicians to try to help address all of the medical and behavioral issues that might occur and are interfering with a child's functioning at home or in the community. This morning, I'd like to talk to you about eating. And eating is one of the most natural and automatic things any of us could do. Yet at the same time, there's an awful lot children have to learn about eating. And for some kids, eating comes easily. And for some kids, eating just comes hard and is more difficult. And whenever a parent has a child who's not eating well, it really causes a lot of stress within the family. So what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today is how to address eating and try to give some ideas or tips that you can use as a parent that might be able to help you with your child. So the first thing to keep in mind, though, is if your child is having a problem with eating, especially if they're losing weight or even if they're not gaining weight, sometimes that's an indication of a medical problem. For instance, a lot of infants and toddlers have reflux. They bring up some of the food that they just ate, and that might be something which a pediatrician needs to be able to address. The second thing is that a lot of kids sometimes have intolerances to dairy or to gluten, which is a protein found in wheat products. And that might be something also which a pediatrician or your family practitioner needs to know about so they can help direct you either to a gastroenterologist, or if we can rule out medical issues, then your pediatrician can direct you to an occupational therapist or a speech therapist who has a specialty in their ability to help children and help parents get over the hurdles that sometimes occur with eating. Now, because eating is so natural for most people, we forget sometimes about how much you actually have to learn about eating. For example, kids on a sensory level have to understand what foods are sweet and salty and tasty and savory. They also have to learn, what's the right portion to eat? How much can I eat in a single bite? How much can I eat in a meal? Can I feel my internal sensations so that know when I'm hungry so that I can ask for food, or I know when I'm full so I can stop eating? Kids also have to learn how to eat with utensils, how to use a spoon, how to use a fork, eventually how to cut their food with a knife and fork. They might have to learn how to drink from a bottle first, and then from a straw, and then a sippy cup, and then a standard cup. And of course, down the line, what kids have to learn too is you want kids to learn the social aspects around eating, good manners at the table. How do they coordinate their biological cycles in terms of eating and hunger with, say, breakfast and lunch and dinner, and then looking at how do they eat nutritious foods. How do you eat the foods that are healthiest for you? How do you eat a balanced diet? And then how do you stay away from all those fast foods and foods that are high in salt and sugar and so forth. And the way kids learn these is primarily through their interaction with their parents. The parents are always going to be the best teachers and the first teachers of their kids. And so there's a lot of things that parents can do that help kids, especially kids with special needs, learn how to be able to eat and eat a healthy diet. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say vegetables. Vegetables, I know for a lot of children, even for adults, are sometimes things that are hard to eat. Now, everybody knows that you should eat your vegetables. We've all heard the messages that vegetables are healthy for us. They give us great nutrition. But even average Americans are actually eating fewer vegetables now than they did back in the 1970s, even though vegetables are more available and are more varied than ever before. So how do we get kids to try to eat vegetables? Now, a lot of kids, say with autism or special needs, start out with having sensory difficulties. By sensory difficulties, what I mean is that they really are hypersensitive to the taste or the texture or the feel of the food that's in their mouth. When they're hypersensitive, sometimes they will gag on foods. Sometimes they have a hard time figuring out how to take the right bite, chew it up, form it into a bolus, and then swallow it with the right coordination. Other times, the smells of the food or the way the food looks causes such a strong reaction in the child that they just don't feel comfortable, and their first reaction is to resist and to try to avoid having that food anywhere even near them. Now, that can be a really stressful situation on the part of parts of parents and families. So there's a lot of things, though, that families can do. The first thing to remember is if you have a child who's hypersensitive or for any way is reacting negatively to the food that you're presenting, the first thing is patience. Kids don't change their food preferences easily, and they don't tend to change their food preferences at the drop of a hat just because we ask them. A lot of times kids are going to change their food preferences slowly, but it takes time, it takes exposure, it takes an opportunity for the kids to see that, hey, other people in my family really like these foods and are enjoying them. A lot of times with kids who are very sensitive, you also have to start out with the child just getting comfortable with the look of the feel of the foods in their hand, the smell of the foods that are on their plate. And so some of the best ways actually to get kids to gradually learn to eat something like vegetables is to help you with the process. Help you with the process of looking at the foods and buying them in the supermarket, in the grocery store. Bringing the foods home, helping the kids participate in the cleaning and the preparing of the foods for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Have the kids help out where they can, whether it's some peeling or dropping the foods in the water, or if they are able to, maybe even cutting or slicing the foods. Maybe even help put foods on the plates. The idea is that you don't necessarily ask the kids to have to eat the foods at this time. What we want them to do is just get comfortable with them, get comfortable with the sights, the smells, even the sounds that foods can make. When it comes to mealtime, one of the best things to do is to give kids small portions. If they would like more, they can always ask for more foods. Present the foods yourselves as something that you are enjoying. If the kids see yourselves, and especially if they see brothers or sisters eating the foods, that's going to encourage them to want to try it. Maybe not right that day, but if they see that over and over again, eventually what they're going to say is that, this looks interesting, or I'm hungry enough that I think I'll give this a little bit of a try. And it's okay if they try really small bites and really small portions at first. There's even something that you can do too, where you can start out with the kids being able to just pick up a food in their hand, and then the second step is, can they bring it to their mouth and just kiss the food? Sometimes we play a game where the kids will kiss the food and then they kiss it goodbye, or they can lick the food and they lickety-split, the food is gone. So the idea is that they don't necessarily have to eat it right that first time. But again, just get their foods, bring it up to their mouths, get the foods closer, get them to touch it, feel it, smell it. And eventually, most kids will be willing to at least give the food a taste. But remember, kids are more likely to eat when they feel they have some control over the process. when they feel like the food is desirable and they want to eat. That's the best case scenario. Kids don't do well whenever they feel like the food is imposed on them. So there are occasions that sometimes you can get a child to eat something if you insist or you push them to eat it. But most of the time what happens in that situation is that as soon as the kids have an opportunity to make their own decisions, they won't eat that food for the rest of their life. So you're better off trying to have kids see that people are enjoying the foods and they want to try them and they try them on their own than necessarily trying to force them or creating a punishment that, for example, if you don't eat your food, then you can't have your dessert. Okay? And when it comes to dessert, it's better for kids to see that dessert is a natural ending to the meal rather than a reward for eating your meal. If kids, for whatever reason, don't tend to eat their a dinner or part of their dinner, they'll probably get a little hungry. If they get a little hungry, that's probably going to motivate them to want to try some food either later in the day, and you can offer, again, fruits or healthy snacks, or it may help them, be a little bit hungrier when it's time for breakfast. Another really good way of getting kids to try more foods, including things like vegetables, is don't necessarily introduce all of the new or different foods right away. Start out with the foods that they like the best. So for instance, a lot of kids, for example, like what I would describe as the beige diet. They like chicken nuggets, and they might eat toast, and maybe cheese and macaroni, maybe even some peanut butter, but they tend to avoid anything with a lot of bright colors, yellows, greens, reds. They tend to avoid foods with a lot of strong tastes. But if they happen to like waffles, you might have more success seeing if you can add, instead of maple syrup, maybe add a little blueberry syrup. Maybe make a face with a couple of blueberries and a slice of banana on the waffle. Maybe be able to take the waffle and break it up into small parts and use a little toothpick that has a little piece of a strawberry on top of the waffle, and kids are picking up the piece of the waffle and the strawberry at the same time. Being able to play games with a little squirt of whipped cream or something on the waffle. If they like regular waffles, maybe try chocolate chip waffles, or maybe strawberry waffles, or something like that. But take what they like and see if you can expand it out to something that's just a little bit different. Have them reach out of their comfort zone just a little bit, not too far, so that they really feel that they are getting into their uncomfortable zone. The more kids feel like they have some familiarity with the food that's in front of them, the more likely they are to try to eat it. Another interesting thing about kids, though, who are on the autistic spectrum range is that every once in a while we also see a child who is hyposensitive. And the hyposensitive kids are actually kids who don't notice flavors quite as much. And for those kids, they actually prefer the opposite. They prefer strong flavors. I've had kids before that they wouldn't eat most regular foods until I brought out the taco sauce and peppers and the ranch dressing, and it's only when they dipped these foods into these really strong flavors that actually they got interested in eating them. I've had kids that won't eat sweet candies, but they love to have the warhead candies, which are really strong sour tastes. So you have to look at your child's sensory preferences. Look at the foods that they typically eat, see how I can expand them. Be careful, try not to ever impose food on kids if at all possible, and try not to connect punishment to eating or not eating. Even kids who are on the autistic spectrum disorder, even if they have a narrow range of foods that they're eating currently, as long as they're healthy and they're getting enough nutrition, you can expand their diet over time. But doing it in a way that the child feels like they have some control and making the food desirable for them, using a playful approach with the food. And I know sometimes parents don't like to throw food away because they feel like they're wasting it. But really, if kids are being able to take foods and they're using them for arts and crafts, or they're playing guessing games with foods, or you can get a child to guess what the food is when they have a blindfold on, or they just bring it to their mouth and they sniff the food. That type of thing will get the children much more comfortable with foods and being willing to try it when you go to mealtime, and then really try to get the kids to eat then. One last good tip is that we have a tendency, all of us, when we have a child try a new food, we always want to say, well, did you like it? Well, what I would suggest is stay away from the did you like it or didn't like it, but see if you can get the child to tell you how did the food taste. You know, did that taste sweet? Did it taste salty? Was it crunchy? Was it mushy? If you can get the child to focus in on the characteristics of the food, the flavors, and describe the smells and so forth, most of the time they're going to be more willing to eat the foods. If the kids are focused on being asked whether they've liked something or don't like it, it tends to make everything too black and white. And most kids, if it's not familiar, if they can't tell right away it's in their comfort zone, their first reaction is going to be, oh, this is different, I don't like different. But if we can get them to pay attention to the way the food tastes and what kind of flavors it has, you have a much better chance of then getting the child to accept the food and be comfortable with it. Once again, if you do have a lot of issues regarding kids who have behavioral issues, sensory issues, even communication issues related to food, you can easily go to an occupational therapist or a speech therapist who can help you out with all of these things that I mentioned. Everything from developing the oral motor control to be able to chew and swallow, to the sensory issues to make kids more comfortable with the sensory aspects of food, to the communication aspects of having kids telling you about the foods that they're eating and what they would like to eat. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time and appreciate your paying attention, and I hope this information has been helpful.